Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Girl Dad Show. Today I have Jani with me. He is a prolific entrepreneur and an investor, and I'm super excited to catch up and learn more about his journey being a professional parent while he builds his career and his family at the same time. Jani, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. A professional parent, TBD, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. I shouldn't have qualified that until I understood what you're
I'm
what
like,
you're
only
actually
time will
doing here.
tell, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. I'll
That's
give you the
funny.
honor. I'll give you the title. Yeah,
Yeah,
but yeah. Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, what you do for a living, and what you're working on?
yeah, for sure. Well, I moved to Austin about 3.5 years ago to continue chasing my dream of building a business that could help people identify disease before symptoms show. And that company was called imaware. I got into healthcare because I had a family member go through a disease that absolutely could have been prevented if they had just performed a screening test. So that was how I got into healthcare, and through investor support, that's how I ultimately moved to Austin 3.5 years ago, right in the middle of COVID.
Oh, wow.
And since then, have continued to work on startups, fire up a couple more startups, advise, work with Techstars as an advisor, angel invest in other companies, and really be part of that Austin ecosystem here. That's trying to bring innovators and support them getting out to market. So I just love being here in Austin and being part of this community.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then just refresh my memory. Where did you come from again?
Toronto, Canada.
Toronto. Okay, very good. Yeah. So
Yeah,
this is kind of a big contrast then. That's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah,
nice
and
and
it's
warm.
also interesting that you came during the pandemic and not necessarily to escape Toronto, but for the business. You were coming here to kind of grow the business further out in Austin.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, because
absolutely.
I moved here because I just wanted more space. I was in San Francisco feeling a little bit trapped with my family, and so we wanted a little more space, so we came out here. But you weren't part of that great migration. You were just here because the business led you here.
Yeah, and just had the side benefit of, tripling the size of the place I lived in for the same place. Toronto's probably like San Fran, ridiculous rents and costs and things like that. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, other than investing and advising right now, what are your some aspirations and where are you headed over the course of this next chapter of your career?
yeah, it was turning 45 last October felt like it was one of those milestones in life.
Oh, wow! Happy birthday!
And yeah, thank you. Belated now, right? And
Very belated. Yeah.
yeah, just I kind of took stock in what I've been able to accomplish, and one of the things that kept coming up for me is how do I help the next generation of entrepreneurs and founders through whatever it is that they may be struggling with, whether it's a little bit of confidence in imposter syndrome or really nailing that product market fit. So for me, it's really getting connected with founders who are changing the world and doing what I can to help them. So I think that's going to be my next 5 to 10 years. And so I don't really know what that means I'll be doing, but I know
Mm,
I know how I'm going to show up, right?
yeah,
So
that's
you might
awesome.
see me running around getting coffees for people. That could be that could be so.
You're just open to it. You're kind of like free willing, like where it's going to go. You're just going to let the world kind of take you
Yeah,
in that general direction.
yeah, exactly.
That's
And
amazing.
being in Austin, I just know there are amazing tailwinds, amazing opportunities, and yeah, I'm just open to supporting amazing founders. And I'm working with, a few myself right now, and it's going to go in beautiful places.
Yeah, and then how old are your kids? Do you mind sharing a little bit about your family?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a beautiful wife of 13 years, lucky number 13 this year, and two boys, 4 and 7. The 7-year-old and my first startup are the same age. So I was able to go home that one beautiful day and say, hey, hey, honey, I'm quitting my day job. I don't know where my salary is coming from, but I got this startup that I just like I got to do. It's just my calling, and so yeah. So I measure my startups, iMore's lifespan alongside my older kids' lifespan. So
That's awesome.
yeah,
That's so cool. And then, so what does your oldest think, or what do your kids think that you do, and what do they think that you do now?
I'll show you what they think I do. They think I
Yeah,
am on
please.
this, and all I
Yeah.
do is this all day. So they're like, It's pretty ridiculous. They're just like, why did you have to go to school so long to talk all day? And I'm like, I don't know, but you got to go to school.
Why'd you have to go to school so long to talk all day? That's funny. And then, what does your wife think about this new transition?
It's amazing how it all really just worked out. She worked in Canada for Indeed, and of
Hmm.
course, here in Austin, that's where they have their corporate headquarters. So
Yeah.
it just really worked out. And from her career perspective, she's been able to actually be with her team instead of
Hmm.
being remote over Zoom and up in Canada. So yeah, it's been good for her. We have like what 11 months of sun. So compared to
Yeah.
Toronto where it's snow and raining and it's got all those four seasons, everything's just amazing down here. So yeah,
That's awesome. And
family's
she's
loving it.
happy with you making this transition to kind of just like figuring out a new, what I don't even know how to describe it. You're just kind of like going in that direction. You're just kind of like Jack Kerouacking it. You're just like charting. You're just, I know it's that direction. I'm just going to move forward.
Ask me again in June if I haven't figured anything else out. But yeah, so far so good.
Awesome. Well, that's good. Well, a lot of my questions are really around like business success, and so I'm kind of curious as to like how you even came up with this general direction. Then, like, what are you qualifying? Like, how are you trying to qualify this? Is it just to figure out like the qualifying is maybe figuring out what it is that you want to do next,
Yeah,
and you
I
just know that
think
you want to help people?
yeah, I think it really landed. I feel like when my brother got ill with this cancer that ultimately, the sick care doctors had to fix, but nobody prevented it, even though they could have run tests to see it, kind of growing in his body over 18 months. That became my calling, where previously I was always working in like fintech and insurtech and like building digital products to help these big companies, make a little more money or like produce a new product that could make a little more money, right? So I felt like everything I was always doing was helping companies just grow, and I didn't really know what my purpose was. And so once my once my brother had that illness, it just became clear to me that even though I have not been in healthcare, I have no education in healthcare, like that's where I got to go.
Mm.
And so it took 7 years between 2010 and 2017 when that door opened up, and I got the chance to meet a PhD MD that had helped debunk Theranos. And
Oh wow.
I told him what I was up to and what I wanted to do, and he's like, "Hey, I want to show you something." And he had the science around small volume blood testing, so being able to actually do what Theranos did, but not for 1,000 diseases, maybe like 10 or 15. And
Mm.
so I'm like, oh my God, that seems so much more realistic, not so Star Trekky.
Yeah.
And that was the moment. It was like this light bulb went off, and I'm like, I'm going into healthcare. I don't know what I'm doing, but this doctor who's world renowned has something, and I feel like that's got to get into the hands of people. So I know digital, he knows science and clinical. There's something here, and so that was the impetus to me quitting my job and starting iMore.
That's the origin story.
Yeah,
So
and
it's the
so
same thing that you're doing now. You had a directional drive, and you kind of just let the world match it for you.
crazy, right? If
Oh yeah, it's
if you
actually
felt like
really
that.
cool. So you're literally replicating what you did the last time around, where you said, "I know generally this is the direction I want to go," and now you're just waiting for the world to present itself to you, the opportunity to tap into it.
Yeah, and I've really, again, I know that it is in the healthcare space. I know that there's just so much opportunity there to help people directly with whether it is, again, things like diagnostic screening or, helping people get better jobs in healthcare. The things that I'm working on are really in that sort of health space.
Nice. So yeah, so there's some fine tuning, and you're very clear about that. But that's
Yeah.
generally speaking what you're doing. Again, you're replicating what you did the last chapter of your life, where you just said, "This is the direction. I found my purpose," and you're gonna find that opportunity as you progress.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
I
really cool.
I have to say that, yeah, the way you say it is awesome. Now that I know what my purpose is, what I get to do just shows up. Like it, kind of twisting the tables a little bit.
Oh, I love it. It's actually kind of romantic. It's kind of like a good book. I like that. It's very, very cool, man. A very inspiring way of navigating your life. I think that that's very unique. I do have some tactical questions about the kid being born with your startup, because I understand now that you met the doctor and the timing ended up being perfect to start the business. But were you already like ready to have a kid, or were you already in the process of having a
Three
kid, or
months,
like? How did
Three
that
months
timing
pregnant.
happen?
3 months pregnant. My wife was 3 months pregnant. So
So you did this while she was pregnant.
yeah, I'm sure she just like was totally loving all that stress I just threw at her.
And you still wanted to do it. You didn't want to wait one
Yeah.
more year, 2 years. You just like we're doing it.
It was like this gets to happen right now. It's just like it was I couldn't fathom the idea that somebody else would have gone through what my brother went through if they couldn't get tested. So that's why it was like if we can make home testing affordable, accessible, available, and I can be part of that, like that's got to happen. So it's just like this like crazy urge, right? It's like
Yeah. You were compelled. Yeah, it was like a spark of inspiration and motivation. Oh, it's
yeah.
fantastic. I love it. And then does your 7-year-old know like what the product does and like the purpose and like stuff around it other than you being on your phone all the time? Like does he actually understand that like the timing of it was like basically that's his other brother. That startup is almost like his other sibling, you know?
We've definitely talked about it that way, and he gets that it's like since he's gone to the doctors and had to be, jabbed. It's basically I'm trying to explain to him like, hey, it's an easier way to do that. And so then his natural question was like, well, why can't I get jabbed with what you make? Why do I have to get these big needles? I'm like, well, that's a great question. So yeah, I think he gets it. And then the 4-year-old, who's just a lot younger, obviously, is just like he just thinks what I do is pretty funny to him. So
Yeah, that's awesome. That's
yeah.
cool, man. So what are some of your parenting goals now? Now that you're kind of in this mode of like being able to kind of directionally find something new, I'm assuming that it kind of opens up a little more time and bandwidth in your mental real estate to kind of think about what you want for your kids.
Yeah, 100%. And on a podcast like yours, of course, it's good to acknowledge that. Yeah, when you're in the startup world and you're right in the middle of it, I definitely sacrificed a lot of time away from my kids, like mentally, even though I'm physically in the room, my head's somewhere else. And so just get to kind of like really build an awesome relationship with them. I enjoy taking them to soccer, or just being able to teach them how to make oatmeal in the morning, like little silly things like that I missed out on for years and years and years. So just like catching up in a way, and like, you know, um, I drink a ton of coffee, so I'll take them to the coffee shop and they'll get their kids' temp steam milk. Yeah, and then we just hang out at the coffee shop and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been great to just spend a lot more time with them, knowing I'll never get those years back, right? So it's just like, how can I be present?
It's awesome. And then are you going to try to continue that as you progress if you do find something new to work on, or are you going to try to adapt that again? Would you do anything differently this time around?
Or when you're doing it the kind of the first time, you feel like everything has to be done ASAP. And now that I've got this experience under my belt a few times, sometimes it just doesn't matter how hard I work. It's about how smart you work. And like now that I have some experiences, I don't have to be putting in 100-hour weeks, week after week after week. It's like there's a time and place for that, but it's not every week. So by default, yeah, I'm going to be able to spend way more time. And that's actually even one of the things like I've been sharing with a lot of founders is like they feel like, oh my God, I got to solve everything today. And it's like, you know what? There's maybe 20 things you can do this week at most, more like 8. So let's just like
Yeah.
pick those 8 things or 5 things and get really comfortable. Just like make them great. And then it'll be amazing how much less work you'll have to do, right? So
Yeah. You're like speaking my love language right now, brother. I say the same thing to all the entrepreneurs. I'm like, if you have more than 10 priorities, you really don't have a priority, to be honest with you. And you really want to stick in that 5 to 10 priority range, because you're not doing anyone a service or doing anything well if you have frenetic energy doing all these different things. You gotta like hyper focus. So I love that you said that, and I think that comes with experience, like you said. I love that you're also considering like how it's going to be different this time around regardless, because you just have more experience and you have more leverage, right? And so
yeah.
the ability to like use that experience to balance it and integrate it is probably really key too.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. And then as it relates to your raising a kid, what do you want them? Do you have any inclinations of what you want them to do, or your boys to be? Do you want them to be entrepreneurs as well, or do you have any inclinations there?
Well, it's funny. I love listening to kids when they talk about what they want to be when they grow up. So
Yeah.
It's funny how my older one wants to do the things that I like watching. So he's like, I want to be an F1 racer and on weekends be a DJ. I'm like, if you can pull off being an F1 racer and a DJ, all the power to you, right?
That's
So,
awesome. Yeah.
and then, yeah, he got into soccer. So he's like, I want to play with Messi one day. I'm like, you know what? Everything's, I do not want to stunt that dream at all. So he's got some pretty good dreams there.
Yeah.
Um, and then the younger one is just into Legos, like, and he's like, I want to
Yeah.
build things when I grow up. I'm like, hey, so let's play Legos. Like,
Yeah.
it's so fun to just like I grew up playing Legos, and it's just awesome to sit down and play Legos with my kids. It's like
Yeah.
I
That's
guess the best
awesome.
gift ever.
And then for you, as you know, it sounds like, if I can take a stab at it, it sounds like you're not necessarily formed on what you want them to do. You're not pushing them towards anything. You're just kind of like see where it goes.
Yeah, I grew up in a small town in northern Canada, and the way my parents, kind of taught me was just curiosity. It's like you don't have like, it's great that you're getting grades and like you're starting to show that you're not good at English and you're okay at this and stuff, but it's just like, don't get fixated on like that you already have to pick what you got to do. It's more like, hey, just be curious and explore what you want. And then, if something's not working, it doesn't mean it'll never work. And if something's amazing, it doesn't mean you have to dedicate your life to it. So, yeah, I kind of like grew up playing some weird different sports to other people, like badminton, javelin, cross country, mountain biking, soccer. I just did all the different things, and yeah, and it just, I guess, allowed me to just experience a lot of different things out there. So same for my kids. It's like I'm not yet pushing them into too much, but the older ones really like soccer, for example. So yeah, we're going to soccer a lot now, and yeah, and the younger one loves Legos. So those are the two areas, and I can see how those can become skills in life around good teamwork. So I think maybe the way to answer your question is I'm focused on some of the soft skills for the kids, and not so much
Yeah.
like what they do, but it's like, do they have confidence? Do they know how to communicate? Can they play in a team setting? I
Yeah.
feel like those are pretty important things at this age, so that's what I'm focused on.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I completely agree with you on the soft skills and like kind of those core values, right? Like especially with my 7-year-old, um, I'm starting to like realize that like they're getting to this stage, or at least mine is getting to this stage where they're becoming more aware of other kids and like different values and judgments and things like that, right? And so they're starting to like question me a lot. I don't know if your 7-year-old's questioning you more, but my 7-year-old questions me a lot, right? Like, why do you do that? Or like, is that fair if you do that, but I don't do that? Like, there's a lot more questioning, you know what I mean? Of like things, and she's much more aware of her friends and like the different
Mm,
groups that are happening. And so I've noticed that like the most important thing right now, because I'm kind of similar to you, although I do want them to be musical, so I keep trying to push them into music, and my wife keeps pushing them into sports. So we're like confusing the crap out of our kids between both of our desires. But at the end of the day, I'm more like you too. I want them to like kind of explore what they want to explore, but the thing that I try to focus on is those like soft skills,
hmm
right? Like socialization skills, like how to like be happy with yourself, self confidence, and overcoming adversity, things like that. But it's so hard to figure out how to do it.
right.
I try to think back to how my parents did it, and I'm not entirely sure I want to replicate them either. You know what I mean? Because I think some of the stuff they did was kind of crazy as well. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you feel this way at all?
I grew up in the 80s,
Yeah.
so I just feel like, yeah, there's a lot of things that I don't know, they just feel different nowadays, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm with you. I'm just curious, you said your 7-year-old asks you, what's the toughest question she's asked you that questions you?
Well, there's a couple of things that she's asked that are really funny and also really good. Like she'll say like, "How come you want me to do these things when you don't do it?" Right?
Mm,
And I can't think of an exact example, but it's like it's a good point, right?
yeah,
So like not to be a hypocrite, right? And to
yeah,
like do all things. The most recent example I can think about was at soccer. So she's playing soccer, and I was yelling from the side. I'm not coach. My wife's coaching this year. I'm like, so I was on the sidelines, but I was still like yelling at her advice. I'm like, go do this, and she came up to me and she just like I know what to do. I just need time to think about it. I don't need you to yell at me about it. Like, I know what I'm trying to do. Like, and then second of all, she's like, how come you get to just sit there, relaxed on the side of the field while I'm running around and you're yelling at me to go do things? And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so funny. And I had nothing to say. I'm like, you're right on both instances.
That's awesome. I mean,
Yeah,
that first one, wow, that's
yeah,
that's some serious awareness. And I'll give you a tip on the second one, which works for
yeah,
me right
please.
now. I don't know if it'll
Yeah,
work for in 6 months, but it's so the answer to how come you don't have to do what I'm doing
yeah.
is I already did it when I was your age. So now I'm like,
Mm.
so it's a kick the can down the road kind of answer, but it's working right now.
I love that, man. That's fantastic. That's really good. And then, as it relates to your childhood, how did you grow up? You referenced the '80s a little bit. I also grew up in the '80s, and I feel like there's a lot of differences that we're employing. Our generation is employing to parenting that our parents didn't, right? And I equated a lot to evolution. Like, I don't think it's bad the way that my parents raised me. I just think that it's my job to be evolved, right? To do it
Yeah.
one step better as much as I can. Like, my dad probably did a better job than his dad, right? And so forth. And so I just love to hear your thoughts on that. Like, how did you grow up, and what are some of the differences that you're trying to employ?
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. Like our parents had the tools that their parents taught them. Those parents, those grandparents had the tools that their great grandparents like so as you get more information tools, awareness, we're evolving as parents. You're totally right. So I mean, 80s kid in a small town, I could grab my bike at 8 a.m. and be like, see you at dinner, right? Like I had the freedom to like at a very young age, like I could explore my city, my town, grab my baseball bat. Like I could be gone for hours, and then like I'd have a couple bucks in my backpack, so I'd buy my own lunch. Like I was already taking care of myself, and or just going to a friend's house unannounced. Like I feel like now it's all got to be planned and scripted. If a kid's coming over, it's like yeah, I'd just show up at my friend's house, and that mom would feed me, and apparently it was no big deal, and then she might have called home to tell my mom that hey, I was over at that house, and everything, it just felt like so much was unplanned and unscripted, and so you could
Yeah.
just go and explore, right, and do whatever, get stuck in like a 4 hour soccer game just because that's what you went and did that day. So kind of you can see like how I grew up is now how I'm living my career and professional life. Like it just felt like it always kind of was amazing and fun, and so good things would happen if I sort of let go of the plan. So that's definitely how I grew up, and in that, I think lacked a little bit of maybe structure and discipline a bit, and so as an entrepreneur, I suffer with when people say you can't do something. I'm kind of like, well, actually, I think I can. So, um, don't know if that's again good or bad, right or wrong, but yeah. So I think there's just like it just felt like there's a lot of freedom and no technology, right? Like nobody, my parents didn't have any tech. I mean,
Yeah.
the people just come over, right? Like so, yeah. It was just very different.
Yeah. Are you trying to employ some of those? How are you merging those two worlds? Because I mean, you live in a world that's very different than that, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I love tech. I'm in tech, right? So it's just like, um,
I have this argument just last night with my wife. My daughter was asking my oldest, my youngest is still kind of young, and so she just asked these kind of complicated questions. But Lily was like, "What does that word mean?" And then what does that word mean? And she's like, I think I need a dictionary. And so my wife's gonna go buy her a dictionary so she can like literally pull these things up to like start understanding the words. And I'm like, just let her use your phone, let her Google it. And I kid you not, my wife and I had like a 25-minute argument about like, no, she should have a physical book. So I don't want her to have access to the phone. I'm like, but now you're hiding her from technology that's so accessible and easy. So now
yeah,
she's gonna spend like something that's not gonna ever be done in her life. Like I think where's the boundary for this? Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like with the
Oh,
technology, you know?
exactly, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow, that's a tough one. What would I want to do? I don't know whose side of the debate I'd be on. I'd be, I'm like,
Go ask your wife tonight. Go just
yeah,
ask her what she would say. Like, hey, if you'd rather give them a dictionary or a phone for a second to go look up that word that they don't understand.
yeah, exactly. And make sure that I don't turn it into a 25-minute debate if I don't have 20. That's awesome.
Yeah, but sorry, I cut you off. Yeah, please go about the rest of the point that you're making.
No, but I mean that's an awesome point, right? It's trying, like, I think as parents it's great to teach kids the way we grew up. There's value in sharing, what we thought were good values and the way we grew up, and of course making sure we don't stunt them so that, when they go out into the world, it's like, hey, can somebody get me that encyclopedia? I got to look up a word, and people are like, what the hell's an encyclopedia, right? So
Yeah.
so I think there's a healthy balance, right? It's, got to balance screen time with like learning how to read and
Right.
just being able to be curious and, find other sources of information other than a phone, right? So I honestly, you'll have to ask me when they leave the house when they're 21 if all of this even played out. But I'm also confident at the end of the day, like, just kids are going to be and they'll just end up being what they want to be. And sometimes I almost say that, hey, all the overthinking I'm doing is not going to really pan out in like 100% of the ways that I thought about it, right? Our job is to provide them like safeguards and values, and they're going to figure themselves out, I can't have an answer for everything for them. So, you know, I kind of have to. It's a complicated answer, I guess, is what I'm getting at. Is sometimes I don't have a clue what I'm doing, and other days I'm so fixated on like that's exactly how you're going to do it, just like I grew up, and everything in between. And that's what I think makes parenting so amazing. Is even I have to keep evolving through this entire journey, right?
Yeah, especially at I think the age that our kids are at, because I had a mentor once tell me that like it stuck with me because now I'm entering the second stage of what he said. But he said that parenting is like trimesters. It's like,
Mm.
the first 7 years, it's very physical. You get on the ground, you play Legos, you clean their butts, you brush their teeth, like you wake up in the middle of the night. Like it's very physical first 7 years, right? And then the second 7 years is like they start questioning you and like starting to figure out who they are and start like, and it's just very mentally like exhausting, because you have to answer all these questions. And then the third 7 years is they know what hurts you and they do it anyways.
Oh,
So it's just emotionally hard for you, and then they leave your house, right?
yeah,
And it was kind of a funny commentary, and it's kind of stuck with me as I like kind of think about us adapting to our kids. And it's been something that I've been really thinking a lot about the last few weeks, because I've noticed a really big difference in my 7 year old, right? Just kind of questioning things now. And I'm realizing that I can't just like dictate like what I used to. Like, I can still do that with my youngest. I can say, like, oh, that's hot, don't touch it. Or close that slowly because you might hurt your fingers. Like, I could just tell. Where like now I'm starting to have to like tell her why. Like, the
yeah,
oldest, I have to like start explaining things. And I'm realizing, like as an executive, like when you're managing teams, you have to kind of sometimes adapt your leadership style. There's a
yeah,
lot of learning that I'm having to do to like rethink my parenting style.
yeah.
And this is, I mean, I'd love to hear your commentary on this and if you agree with me or not. But I link back to my dad. I don't think he ever adapted. I think he stayed the same the entire time. And I'm also an 80s kid, right? So, like, I mean, we're like the same age. So I just like, it's just like, I don't know. And what do you share the sentiment? Do you agree? What are your thoughts?
That's so funny. I love that you said the trimester. It's like there's a physical, then it becomes a mental, and then an emotional sort of trimester. I'm gonna really remember that. That's an
Yeah.
awesome way to think about it. I feel like my parents were awesome in all the senses that they had to be, and yeah, I think one thing about my dad was he was rigid, and I think my mom was flexible, and I think together they just made it work, right?
Mm.
And the way that my dad was in his rigid ways was also great for putting a little bit of discipline, and like sometimes you have to, like, your word matters, right? Like when you say something you got to mean it. So like that kind of rigidity was an awesome thing to observe and be part of. And then my mom, who was the ER nurse, and she was just like sort of adaptable and go with the flow, and so that, like, I learned a little bit from both of them. So it's funny that now I'm a healthcare entrepreneur because my dad was a construction entrepreneur, my mom was an ER nurse, so I put that together. And that's just like how my life is like I feel like I'm a bit of my mom, a bit of my dad, right? So,
Mm.
and so same for my kids. If they now get a little bit of me and a little bit of my wife, then that's how they're evolving, right? um,
It's awesome.
But
I love it. Do you think your wife and you are agreeing on like the future success of like your kids? Do you guys have those kind of conversations, and have you guys had those kind of like strategic planning sessions as parents?
it's funny. We both agreed that right now that the idea of like curiosity and like some of these like soft skills is very important. Like socialization, all of those soft skills are more important than are they the top of the class in any one subject or two, and are they like learning music. I grew up playing piano, and I'm like, piano can start later this year, but I'd rather that they come to appreciate music and really want to be playing piano instead of just being shoved at. So I think we agree on right now that the curiosity sense is good, but obviously pretty soon it's going to be like, all right, what are the three things we're going to do each night? Like if I have to drive them to A, B, and C, it's like, what are those three things I'm driving this kid towards, right? And do I want to be driving 5 days a week to different activities? So I think
Yeah.
when this fall comes around and it's like, hey, what are we going to do? Is it soccer, swimming, music, right? It's like, okay, hopefully that's an easy conversation. So, but I think it
Yeah.
will be, right? As parents, we have debates and then we keep going on, right?
Yeah. It's awesome. I love that. You guys sound like a good partnership. Sounds like a good team that you guys have created. Adding kids to the partnership. That's fantastic. It's funny that you bring up the whole activities thing, because my problem right now that I struggle with as a parent is figuring out how much do I push the activity, like the type of
Mhm.
activity, so they try more things. Because my concern is that they're not. Do they need it? I don't know. I want to expose them to more, right? But I also want them to like try a lot of things. But if they don't try something all the way, then it's also like, are they really like giving up on it? Or are they actually like, are actually good at it? And then second of all, like, are they trying enough things? Because now Lily's in soccer, and so now she's kind of like, she's been doing it for 3 years, and so now she's like into it. And I'm wondering like, should we like stop it while she's young and try to throw in basketball or volleyball, or do we just keep her in soccer because she likes it and she enjoys it? But maybe she could enjoy something else. Where like Grace is very quick to say she doesn't like to do all these activities, and Lily would do an activity every day if she could. She would do like 5 or 6 things, and Grace only wants to do like 2 things. She wants to go to church and she wants to go to theater, and that's like it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like she's like, I don't want to do anything else, and she'll tell you, she's like, this, I'm more than happy just going to church and theater. Those are my 2 activities in school. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that's
And,
cute.
and Lily's older.
Lily's older, yeah, and
That's
Lily's like, I want to do theater, I want to do gymnastics, I want to do soccer, I want to do. And we're just like, do we just drive around for 7 days a week, just like taking her everywhere, or do we like tamper this? Like, what's the curb line, right? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Oh, it's funny. I have the same, situation with my oldest. It's like
Yeah,
there's an abundance of things to
yeah,
do, and he wants to do them all. And the
yeah,
second one is just like, yeah, a much smaller group of things, right? So it's like
yeah,
Legos, and don't really want to try anything else but yet. But I'm like, it'll come. I think the
yeah,
second kid definitely follows, like kind of tags along with the first one. So if the first one's doing something and having fun, I think the second one's like, hey, I want to do that too. So
yeah,
that's what I've kind of learned.
yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
And then, do you have siblings as well yourself?
Yeah,
Are
I
you
have two younger
family?
brothers.
You're the oldest.
I am, yeah. How about you?
Yeah. The second, I'm a family of 4 siblings. So I have an older sister and a younger sister and a little brother.
Oh, wow.
So I'm the second. I'm the second oldest. Yeah, it's been kind of fun because I think we all have certain roles that we play, for sure. Especially growing up, and I think you're right. There's a lot of sibling dynamics, But then, like, to your point, as you grow up, like, none of it matters, Like, we're all like friends now. We're all old and friends,
Yeah.
Now it doesn't even yeah, none of those dynamics matter as much, except for my parents. I don't think my parents ever changed. Going back to the conversation that my dad still like kind of parented the same style the entire time, he still treats me like I'm a kid, even to this day.
Yeah.
And it's really funny. Like when I started my consulting business, I told my mom, and she was like, I was like, hey, I'm going to quit my, cush tech job and try to be a consultant and start my consulting business. And she's like, well, let's think about it. Let me and Dad talk about it. Let's think about it, and then we'll get back to you. Maybe we can talk again next week. I'm like, Mom, I'm not asking for permission. I was calling to tell you that I was doing this.
That
I'm
is
40
fun.
years old. Like this is not like yeah. I'm like I don't know what happened here, but this is not me asking for permission. And she's like, yeah, okay. we'll think about it, and let's talk some more next week. And I'm like, we hung up before they were still thinking that we're gonna talk about. Do you
Wow.
have any of these? Do you have any of these with your parents, or are they a little more understanding that you've grown up?
That's pretty funny. I've had just through my career because I've bounced around exploring and being a consultant and self-employed. I've always had like a high risk job. Like I didn't have one employer that lasted more than 2-3 years,
Mm.
and so I think I stressed them out early on that like I'm gonna have to be career. And now when they ask, they're just sort of like they've just come to accept it. They're like, so what are you doing? Like, and I'm like, well, kind of not much, and or I'm advising, and they're like, does it pay the bills? And I'm like, it's just like the basic questions, right? I'm like, well,
Yeah,
yeah, still paying rent, and
yeah,
and they're like, well, where's that going to take you? I'm like, I don't know. It's like you could just see they're kind of stressed out a bit about that, but and then if it's I'm going on a trip, then it's like, hey, are you driving or flying? Okay, driving, drive safe, don't get a speeding ticket. It's just
yeah.
like, okay, 45, I got two kids in the back. Yes, I did get speeding tickets when I was younger, but I'm not going to get speeding tickets now with the kids in the car, right? So
Yeah, so fun.
they,
Parents are awesome. Yeah,
yeah, totally, they are, right?
that is hilarious, man. I
Yeah,
love that. Yeah, so you're sharing the same sentiment then in that sense. I
yeah,
think that's yeah. I don't think it's ever gonna go away, right? And I can understand now why my parents are like that because I look at my kids and I just like, even as they get older, they're always gonna be like my little babies, just like. And I can imagine them being 30 years old and I'll still love them like they're like my little babies.
of
It's just
course,
like,
right?
yeah, it's inevitable. I think it's just one of those things that you don't realize until you're older and
Until you're there.
wiser. Yeah, yeah, until you're in the shoes. But
Yeah.
anywho, let me switch gears here a little bit and ask you my rapid fire questions I like to ask every guest.
All right, let's do
Um,
it.
all right. So, if you had to give one piece of advice to a soon-to-be parent, what would you give them?
Uh, Definitely don't overthink everything that's going to happen because there's going to be a diaper or something that gets in the way of all of your best laid plans.
Yeah.
And then you start beating yourself up because it's not going to plan, right? So it's just like, just recognize it's a beautiful time and it's so new. And so yeah, just don't get caught up in measuring yourself, against all your beautiful plans. You'll have plenty of time to continue those beautiful plans.
Oh, I love it. That's really good. Okay, next question.
Yeah.
If you could go back and talk to yourself before you had kids, what's the one piece of advice you'd give yourself?
It's funny, subconsciously, don't do it. No, I'm kidding.
That's hilarious.
What's wild is I would have said don't be so afraid to have kids, and because I waited for a long time to have kids, and
Yep.
now that I've had them, there's part of me that suggests like the moment you feel it, just like start it, right? Like start your family, right? So I pushed that off a few years, and so if you're feeling like family is where you want to start and you want to get into starting your family, like just go there.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's really, really good advice to yourself, especially because I think I'm a lot like you. I started late as well too. Well, obviously we have the same age kids, and
Yeah.
we're the same age. So yeah, it sounds like we did the exact same thing. So I empathize with that feeling a lot. I wish I started sooner in a lot of ways. All right, next question here. Oh God, I gotta get these questions memorized. I should have them memorized. I've been doing this for 3 years. I don't have them memorized. What is the next question? I'll go to the last one. Okay, so if you
Okay.
had a favorite business book or favorite book in general, what book would that be?
Oh, I really enjoyed. It was like an unlocking book for me. Tuesdays with Maury. It was a really good book that was in
Tuesdays
my.
with Maury.
Yeah, you should check it out.
I will.
It's just a story of passing on knowledge. I'm not going to give away any of the book, but it's a kind of like a coming of time book for this one character who's connecting with somebody who has lived a robust and experienced life, and there's just like it's just packed full of like just these little nuggets that I just really enjoyed it, and yeah, check it out.
Yeah, so it's not a business book. It just sounds like it's like a life book.
It is, but there's so much that can like really apply to business. And I think just off the back of that statement that you said, I really come to learn that if I'm being really happy in who I am as a person, then the business stuff happens really well too. If I'm trying to separate like my personal life me and work me, then they're at odds with each other. And so I've just found like, really you got to love who you are and love what you're doing in your life, and then the work stuff, the stuff you make money on, is just like so much easier. If you're at conflict with yourself, then the work stuff gets to be, starts to be hard, and there's lots of conflict, and you don't grow and you don't get promotions and all that. So that's why for me, it's like anytime someone asks me what's the best professional book I read, it's usually a personal book. It's like
man.
Just food for thought on that one.
Dude, that's really beautiful. I love that. I actually agree with that so much. I've been really struggling with that this last year about like this whole concept of like work-life balance, and just like trying to figure out like if I even agree with it, because I think that it's not, right? I feel like work-life integration is the better word, and like this whole concept of what you just said is so right. It's like figure out what you need first, right? And like what you want first, and then make everything else fit around it. It's like, man, that's very good food for thought. I love it. Very, very, very elegant way of saying it.
And then the baby book, which I'll credit, I did not read, but my wife did, was Bringing Up Bebe. It's called Bringing Up Bebe. It's the story of an American mother living in France, and how the way they raise kids over there in Europe is just like so much less off. For example, not googling and gagaing with your 3-year-old, like just treating them like an adult, taking them to restaurants. Apparently, kids are ready to be, older, act their age at a much younger age. And so, apparently we do our kids a disservice by, treating them like too much of a baby. And so this book was effective at just being like, hey, you don't have to like baby your babies so much. And if you start at an earlier age, things like potty training can happen earlier, things like sleeping, self-soothing, all these kinds of things, we're almost getting in our way as a parent for successful parenting. So that book was pretty good for just like giving a different perspective.
Wow, that is really interesting. And I've heard about that. I've heard I think I read some sort of news article about Italy being like that, right? Where like the kids are expected to eat at the table just at an earlier age, and they're just expected to like be a part of the communal family. It's multi-generational too, but like it's like no, everyone contributes to putting the family dinner table together. Everyone contributes, and it doesn't matter if you're 2 years old or 5 years old, you still do it, right? And so by having that preconceived expectation, they naturally rise to the occasion.
Yeah. And the flip side is true. If I believe that they're just a little baby who's useless and can't do anything and they're going to make my life hard, guess what they do? Right? Yeah. So it's kind of all up here, right?
It is. Oh, man, I love it. So much good food for thought here. It's good, good, good. All right, to bring us home, when you're not figuring out what you're going to do next on this kind of cool journey towards your new direction, or being a super dad with your 2 sons and your awesome wife, what does Jani do for fun? What's your downtime activities?
Definitely love to. I'm into cars actually, and so whether it's watching F1 here in Austin, that once a year escape, or being able to just go and like rent cool cars on Turo. I definitely love cars. Probably has something to do with my grandpa being a mechanic. So so I definitely love cars, and I love hiking. Austin is such an amazing city for just being able to hike Bull Creek or like, whatever Balcone is. And just going and discovering things. Like, I didn't realize that they discovered a fossilized platypus just here at Bull Creek or something.
So
the dad and his kid like came up with this big fossil. So apparently there's just like all kinds of cool stuff to see. So I love hiking and just exploring Austin that way. So
yeah, that's awesome. And I love Austin too because it's so big. I had no idea how big a city could be until I moved here. I'm like, wow, so much to explore.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. You're going to add something else. I cut you off.
I was just going to say, and then I like trying out every coffee shop in town.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. You and I share a love for coffee for sure. We'll have to do that together sometime. But
yeah,
Jani, I'm going to wrap us up, but stick around after I end the show, okay? But thank you so much for being on the Girl Dad Show and sharing your journey and story with us.
Yeah, of course. It was my pleasure. Enjoyed the time.
Awesome. We'll talk soon, okay?
You got it. See ya.